Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, today we have Michael Cohen on the stand in New York. But first, the weather. It is 63 degrees out. It's like 2 miles an hour. The sun is out. It's very pleasant. Presently, there's no one on the road but myself. That can be interrupted, and maybe. There are a lot of people that think the trial should be televised. And the courts, many, federal and state, don't allow it. And on rare occasions, they permit there to be coverage because of First Amendment right of access to what the government is doing. But that's weighted against how it affects judges, staff, jurors, witnesses, experts, prosecutors, defense counsel, and so forth. And there's a belief that people would just pose in a courtroom and seek emotional reactions. And there is the fear of what we call jury nullification. And what it means is we're nullifying the actual instructions of law based on the facts. And who does that? The jury does it. Is it lawful? No, it's not. But what defense counsel will try to do is to get around a strong claim, which they're having trouble combat either because of the facts of the law. And so they turn to the jury and say this case never would have been brought. That's basically what Trump's defense is, because otherwise it's a slow plea. And I would harangue those experts out there who keep talking about the defenses to this case. There are no defenses to this case unless Cohen admits to lying 8 things that are relevant that contradict what he ever said before. And it's pretty much that way. And then you have to get by all the other testimony. It's insurmountable if the system is fair. Now, a lot of this trial happens outside the courtroom. We have Trump out there doing crazy things. He calls Bragg's name. He makes fun of his physical disposition. He says that the prosecution is just a factor in doing Biden's bidding. The evidence they claim is just worthless. And Trump, on the other hand, by the testimony of Michael Cohen so far today, Cohen says Trump said, just do it. That's the $130,000. Trump said women are going to hate me when they were discussing the material that he suppressed. He said it's going to be a disaster for the campaign. And then, in addition to all these convoluted procedures they followed to conceal what was going on, Trump had a secret name, David Dennison. And he said, you know, it was good food for the public, what he was doing. Now let me roll this back a little bit and compare how else one can hold a court case. In Great Britain, until I think 2013, no cameras were allowed in the courtroom. And if I'm correct, there were also prohibitions about discussing cases in newspapers while the case was going on. The theory seems to get more support from our experiences in a case like this, when a person is busy posing as a victim outside the courtroom, but has no way to present it in the courtroom because he won't testify. He can't testify. Now, I'm not saying he may not testify. He cannot testify if he exercises a shred of intelligence because of the fact that there's so many contradictory things he said and so many admissions he's made that I guess it could drive up the sentence. I doubt the judge, if pushed to say what he thinks is going on, would say the case is going badly for the defense. So what we have is Trump reportedly saying things like, Stormy Daniels, she was a beautiful woman, And the problem with the case from the defense standpoint is they have oversold it without any evidence to support it. Meaning that, for example, ridiculous explanations. That Michael Cohen himself, he just volunteered to give this money and go through all that stuff because what? He thought he was helping Trump? I don't know. So we're at a point where the verdicts are close. And they are likely to be conviction on all counts, unless we get some rogue juror. I think it would be hard because there are 34 counts, and to hang out on all 34 seems highly unlikely to me. Now, I think we do ill when we hypothesize about defenses that Trump has or may have that could win the case for him. I think that's irresponsible. For one thing, I would never give a tutorial to my opponent on what I'm going to do it to his client, because maybe I would be undermining my own case. When commentators do it, they're not sitting in a room with the client working out the alternative possibilities. They're saying, I think this is going to happen. And in this case, they're saying things like, well, if Cohen, who's now on the stand, he does A or B or C, or they get this, then the defense might have an argument of A or B or C. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Now, there have been commentators I agree with who say this is just a question of time. The verdict will be guilty, perhaps all counts. And on to sentencing, on to conditions of bail after conviction, those kinds of things. And that's really where we should be. I think that the coverage of the trial in the half-assed way it has to be, which is court reporters drawing inaccurate pictures, a strain of summarized goings-on based on transcripts and what you hear if you're in the court, and then comments outside the courtroom by the defendant, at breaks even, who goes back into the courtroom and pretends to be present as he sleeps and passes gas. The trial has been conducted well by the judge, and I cannot imagine what a circus this would be if the courtroom was taped. And I know everybody says they're all for it, but maybe they don't remember O.J. Simpson. And I did cover that. I actually was assigned a role giving commentary during the trial, because they figured there would be sidebars with discussions of evidence and DNA and things like that, dead air for radio. And in those periods, and when anybody drew a breath, we could make comments that hopefully were instructive. The predictions made were narrow, and they were tied to specific pieces of evidence. And at the time, some thought in America that the burgeoning group of analysts should not be commenting on trials. Well, we've decided otherwise. We have a different system, but I think we need protections for how we do it presently and how we may do it if we do it with cameras. I think Great Britain had a good idea, because the opportunity to stir a public with selective, misleading, and lying invocations of fact and law undermine the legitimacy of the proceedings that are truly being conducted involving Trump. So that's what I have so far. I mean, he's still testifying and on the stand, but this is when I can get out for a break before the other things I have to do today. The return of semi-spring is most welcome here. The birds were with me at the beginning. They're quiet now. And so I'd like to say goodbye to you from the Cathedral of Trees, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.